You're listening to Should You Read It? Should You Read It is a weekly podcast that looks at books that can help business owners. I provide critiques and recommendations so that you don't have to wade through everything out there and can get back to running your business. Additionally, with each weekly book, we'll look at how it relates to other books in its field and what ideas cross over along all the books that I have read. This week, we're going to look at Do the Work by Steven Pressfield. One key to being successful in your career is doing the work. You must ship your book, or ship your code, or ship your art. It must see the light of day, or it's not a career. All you've got is a hobby then. And that's the whole point of Do the Work by Steven Pressfield. It's to coach you through the predictable resistance points in a project. Do the Work is the next step from Pressfield's previous book, The War of Art, which looks at resistance and how it manifests itself in your life. Now, there's a loose structure to do the work. Pressfield starts by addressing the beginning of your creative project. Then the start of the middle, which is as things seem to be getting rolling. Next is the second middle, when you realize your work isn't getting the traction you thought you would. You have to keep going. Finally, Pressfield addresses the ending, because if you can't finish your work and send it out into the world, then the work really is for nothing. Outside of that loose structure, Do the Work is much like The War of Art. It's a collection of essays and thoughts that surround a topic of the section. There is little prescription in this book, just enough nudges to keep you going as you find your way through resistance in your projects. But you may be saying to yourself, I don't feel resistance in my work. Pressfield would argue that you may not be doing anything important then. In his mind, there is more resistance to be found in important work. And here's a quote from Pressfield in the book. Rule of thumb, the more important a call or action is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel toward pursuing it. At the beginning of your project, as you start it, you must realize that just like there is never an optimal time to have children, you'll never be perfectly ready to start your meaningful project. You must start before you feel fully ready. You only become good enough to do the work justice in the midst of struggling to do the work justice. Second, don't overthink your idea. Outline it fast and then dig into it. Get it going. One of the tenets of extreme programming is that planning future features is a waste of time. Fix today's problems today and let tomorrow's problems worry about themselves. You'll know more about tomorrow's problems tomorrow, and then you'll have the information to fix it. If you're having trouble getting started, then Pressfield tells you to look at the end of the project. What does it look like? How does your book end? What features must you have to launch? Then you fill in how to get there, but just start somewhere. Finally, if someone says your idea just isn't the way we do things, ignore them. That's faulty thinking trying to hold you back. Do your work, believe in the process, believe it's going to bring something worthwhile out of the other side. Now, our first middle, as we start getting things rolling, and we'll start with a quote from Pressfield here. When you and I set out to create anything, art, commerce, science, love, or to advance in the direction of a higher, nobler version of ourselves, we uncork from the universe in ineluctably an equal and opposite reaction. Much of the thoughts here are very similar to Paul Graham's Maker and Manager essay. Do your maker work, your solid, good creative work in your prime times. Do your research and manager tasks in the other times when you have less energy. Focus on creative output, not shuffling the deck chairs of email and social media. We see this as well in When by Daniel Pink. And there'll be a link to this in the show notes. That we're not always at our peak, and we need to organize our creative tasks into the times when we're at our peak, which is generally the morning for larks and generally later in the afternoon for night owls. And then we actually hit a lull, and then we come back up late in the day and very late for night owls. So these deck chairs are just the resistance stopping us from work getting done. As Pressfield said already, start at the end, then fill in some gaps on the path towards your end, then fill in some more gaps, go as far as you can see, and then you'll see further. Take those next steps that you can see now. Now the second middle, when you're not getting the traction that you dreamed of. When we had our first kid, the doctor told us she was cute. I chuckled and said that he probably always did that to everybody because, of course, that's just what you say. So evidently, when he thinks a baby isn't cute, he just says it looks like the parents, which I thought was hilarious. So our book, our software project, our illustrations, our designs, they're our babies. Sometimes they are cute, but only to the parents. This middle is about showing that possibly ugly baby to your tribe, to your close circle, and then dealing with the "it looks like you" comments. What will you do when people don't fall in love with it? Here's a quote from Pressfield. That our project has crashed is not a reflection of our worth as human beings. It's just a mistake. It's a problem. And a problem can be solved. Remember that this project has no bearing on your worth. Remember that the ideal lives you see portrayed around the web in gleaming articles about your idols are polished versions that bear little resemblance to the truth. Know that Tim Ferriss talked about this in a recent podcast episode, where he said that even the failures he shows online is like a mere fraction of what actually happens, and that he still ends up showing way too many of the successes for his liking, and there's way more failure going on in his life all the time. All of our idols crashed on a bunch of ideas first. Then they refactored them, and they started over. They refined them into the idea you know today. You only idolize them after a bunch of failures. As the catchphrase of Meet the Robinsons says, keep moving forward. Now the end, when it's time to ship your work. And again, we'll go back to Pressfield here. If we can't finish, all our work is for nothing. So if you do all this work on your project and that language is with no eyes on it, you wasted your time. Now I get it. Shipping work is scary because the world gets to weigh in on it. Well, let's go back to Pressfield. When we ship, we'll be judged. The real world will pronounce upon our work and upon us. When we ship, we can fail. When we ship, we can be humiliated. Now, a few years ago, I released a course that I thought was awesome. I invested months and months in it, and I made 0 sales. It was hard to see nothing happening. In part, I'm lucky to have kids that not only make my life hard, they sing to me when I come home and love me just because I click some Lego bricks together. They don't base my worth on my work. You all don't care that much either. Many of you have been around long enough that a misstep yields emails asking me what's up, and then when I reply, laughter and words of encouragement. Once you've shipped it, it's easy to let resistance crop up again in the form of sitting back on your laurels. To this, Pressfield says, start the next project. Ryan Holiday echoes this in Perennial Seller. He says that the best marketing for a book is another book. Joanna Penn talks on her podcast regularly about needing 20 books to build a $50,000 a year income. As people become interested in your next book, they're going to look back at the back catalog and purchase some of that as well. Once you've shipped something, start looking around to see what the next project is and then start on it. Now, the big question of this podcast is, should you read it? I admit that I actually don't love Pressfield style for nonfiction books. Even when there's a loose structure in Do the Work, I kept needing to stop and figure out what he was talking about so I could evaluate if he was actually achieving his goals. Much like The War of Art, Pressfield's previous book, Do the Work is very quotable. If you're looking for a quick read as a pick-me-up as you battle resistance in your creative project, Do the Work is a great book. If you're looking for some system to help you grab the pieces to move forward, look elsewhere. Do the Work is meant to give you a kick in the pants so that you can keep being creative. It's not a prescription. So yes, you should read Do the Work. Thanks for listening to Should You Read It? To support the show, you can leave me a review in iTunes or heart or a star in whatever podcast player you use. These help more people find the show. If you want to get more reading done, you should also look at an Audible membership. If you get one using curtismchale.ca/recommends/audible, that will support the production of the show financially. Next episode, we're going to dig into extreme programming by Chromatic.